Welcome to Brazen Education with Educator Barnes, a podcast with a focus on speaking your truth, being transparent to help others, and having no shame about it. Because we can't move forward until the truth is known. Hey, it's Educator Barnes here, and welcome back to Brazen Education. The topic for today is why stay interviews matter. As promised in 2020, I wanted to really expand some of what I've been doing on the podcast. And one of those ways to do that is to have a conversation with another person. So today I have my very first guest, and that is my husband, Jermaine Barnes. And we're going to talk about stay interviews. Jermaine is a senior database analyst, technical and team lead. He works for the state of Indiana. And a conversation I had with him, I think it was it about like a year ago or so?
No, it was more like 2 or 3 years ago.
Maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. He came home and he said he had a stay interview, and I kind of freaked out because I'm like, what is going on? If you don't know what a stay interview is when your employer or whoever supervises you, they sit you down and they talk to you about what is it that I need to do or the organization needs to do to get you to stay at our company and stay in this role. So when he came home and said he had a stay interview, I'm like, man, have I been checked out? Have I been missing something? Like, I don't really understand like why this is happening. And then he kind of explained what happened. So can you talk to me or talk to us a little bit about how these interviews work at your job?
Yeah, so I want to preface this with this was an initiative by my state agency as far as keeping talent and making state employment, government employment more attractive for soon to be graduating students at a university or college, new workforce. So with that, they got the services of Gartner, which kind of helps you do analysis of what you're doing and if you're doing it well. And one of the questions that came up during this analysis was, do you feel that you're getting talented people, and are you keeping them? So most of the seniors in my agency, senior officers, said that's a good question, because at the time there was a lot of turnover when I was employed at the agency and this analysis was being done. And what they wanted to do was first determine, is it a problem? Has it been a problem? And then how do we correct that problem? So one of the first things that happened as a result of this analysis was they sent out a questionnaire to every single employee that asks, what do you think of our agency? What do you think of your employer? Point blank. And some of the questions that they asked, besides that, initial question, was on like a point system, basically from 1 to 10, how strongly you feel about this in regards to your employer. And the results of that was, we suck, more or less. That's what they discovered after they got the tally of all the results from the employees. So then when Gartner did, they stepped in and said, okay, here's something that you can do now to help circumvent, losing talent or losing your employees. And one of those was, suggestion was a stay interview. And as my wife, described to you, it was basically a set of questions or just an open forum to say, you're here now. You've told us what you don't like. Tell us what you do like and what you would like to see that would help you stay here. So, my manager, he just brought me in the room and sat me down, and he says, you're talented here. We like what you're doing, but we understand that we haven't been the best employer. And he just asked me flat out, and like, what can I do, or what would you like to see done to keep you here? And then he asked, what other things do you see are needed to make state employment, public sector employment more attractive for this new workforce? And I don't know, with people's background as far as, working in a public sector or a private sector, but, I can tell you right now, just as a big difference is, just the amount of pay and, just the acknowledgement that you're good at your job. A lot of people have this assumption that government employees suck at their job. And I can tell you right now, that is the furthest thing from the truth. While there are a lot of issues with the government, I can tell you that if the government was full of people who suck and don't know how to do their job, this country would be falling apart. Your state would be falling apart. You won't be able to file unemployment. You won't be able to get child support. You won't be able to have your insurance filed correctly. I mean, if that stuff, if public sector employees, government employees suck that much, nothing will be getting done. So I want to kill that narrative, so to speak. That I work with very talented people here at the state of Indiana, very talented, and we get a lot of stuff done. I'm not going to sit here and claim that it's perfect, or that it's done the first time, or that it's done right the first time. But we get stuff done, and there are some good employees. So with that, just to kind of, get back onto the topic, I gave my, my recommendations, my suggestions as far as how to just make state government more attractive, how to get more of the new workforce into, public sector jobs, into state government jobs, and also what to do to keep them. The benefits are great. You can even get some of these benefits in the private sector, but I mean, the benefits are awesome, but you can do a lot of work and never get acknowledgement for it in the public sector. Never get it. So that was one of the first things I said, is just acknowledge people. Don't just shut them down and refute their suggestions. I mean, that happened a lot until we started having these stay interviews and they actually started asking our opinions and stuff. And something else that came out of it is some of these our managers got evaluated. That was kind of it wasn't part of the stay interview, but the responses they got from the stay interview prompted to have another survey of, let's rate your manager. You see it so often where, it's always a superior, rating their subordinates. But, this was the first place I've ever worked where I got to rate my superior, ever. And I've been in the workforce for 16 years, and I've never, ever got to rate my superior and have that affect their employment. So when that happened, that really, so to speak, rattled the cages of all the managers, all the senior officers.
Bet it did.
Because they really found out, were they effective at being a manager and supporting their subordinates so they can be a happy, healthy employee and do the work of the state. So,
yeah, I think you made some really good points there. I was actually jotting some points down because I want to circle back to some of this stuff. And when Jermaine was telling me about like the state interview and all these things he got to do with it, I started thinking like, we need this in education, because just my husband, like he said, he's in the public sector. Educators are in the public sector. We're interacting with the public, community groups, school board, parents. There's so many people we interact with, and we are having some of the same problems that he mentioned. You're talking about, you get talent in, are you retaining the talent? Because one of the worst things that can happen at a school is to have a talented teacher and that talented teacher leaves. And so now it's like you're trying to hope to get someone that's as good, and you're trying to replace that talent. And that really doesn't do your organization. It doesn't really benefit your organization if you're constantly bleeding out talented people. So when he said this to me, I'm like, not only, first of all, I just think this should be a norm in just the workplace, but I think personally for myself, being an educator, I would like to see this in my profession, these stay interviews, because I think about right now. So at my job, we just did intent to returns, and I know that probably sounds a little early. We did them, I believe they were due last Friday, and they came out at the end of January. But my principal is expecting, so we're doing them a little early so she can be part of these conversations. And how my particular school set up, I actually supervise teachers. So I have hiring power and I have firing power. I have the say to say whether you come back or not. And this is not arbitrary. It's not me up on my feelings. There's metrics that's being used for this. But I started to think like the intent to return time is really the wrong time to be asking like, what can we do to keep you out of school? It's a little too late for that. I think this conversation needs to happen way in advance, and I think is really, really needed, because one of the things that Jermaine just said, he mentioned losing talent, and the other thing I found really important is he said acknowledging people, because I know educators, sometimes they just want to thank you, saying like, thank you for dealing with my child that's been difficult. Thank you for burning the midnight oil. Thank you for staying up and trying to figure out a different way to teach that lesson, because like my child and these other kids didn't get it. And then the other piece I really like is rating your manager. And I know there's quite a few educators that listen to this podcast, but I bet some of you are out there snapping your little fingers right now, because you probably would love to give some feedback to your principals. Because, I'm known for that viral post I wrote, Teachers Quit Principals, Not Schools. So we know that there's a tie-in to turnover or burnout at jobs based on who the supervisor is. Shouldn't at some point we start questioning what the supervisor is doing? And like Jermaine said, they brought in, what did you say it was, Gardner?
Yeah.
They brought in Gardner to kind of give them some recommendations. They did a stay interview, and from the stay interview, they learned like, we can't just talk to the employees. We got to talk to their supervisors and have the subordinates nonetheless rate them. I will say at my current job, I get rated by the people I supervise. So I get surveys back. I had my first one done in first semester. And what was so funny, I was just like, my parents like, yours is decent. Like, you don't need to beat yourself up about it. But I'm the type of person, if I see any flags anywhere, and I won't even say flags, because that's not even the right word. If I see anywhere where I didn't hit the highest mark I could hit, I'm thinking about what can I do differently. But I will say, because some of my team members, they actually put their names, which I appreciated. I know with those people, because I knew it was them, I was able to have a follow-up conversation with them and get more of an understanding. Because when you have a survey, you may have a character count and how much you can say, or you may be afraid to really say what you're thinking. So the people that name themselves in the survey, I was able to have a follow-up conversation, a deeper conversation, and I can ask, like, what can I do to help? how can I make this better? And then the other thing that my team told me that they really appreciate that I say is that I'm honest about when I can't make things better. And I'm honest about saying, like, that sucks. Like, that really sucks that we have to deal with that right now, and there's nothing I can do about it. I'll speak up about it, but I don't think that's going to change. And people say, it's one thing to feel like I filled out this survey and then like, well, maybe somebody listened to it. It's another thing for me to fill out the survey. My supervisor comes to talk to me and the supervisor is honest. The supervisor is bringing integrity and saying, hey, these are the things I'm willing to do. These are the things I can do. And these are the things I can't change. And even if I can't change those things, will you stay with me? Because I am going to advocate for you. And that just, that really, really speaks volumes. And the other thing, my husband and I, we're parents. We have twin boys. And so, Jermaine, if these state interviews became a thing in education, how do you really think this is going to affect, like, schools? Do you think it's going to improve schools? How do you think it's going to affect classrooms, kids? What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, I think it's needed. I've never been in the realm of education other than, just being a student myself. But I think any place that calls itself an organization providing service or a product ought to be rated. Now, I think it should be rated yearly. But in any event, it should be rated. And doing that in education, I think it definitely should be rated. Maybe it should be rated every semester. But I definitely think it's needed. I think it will definitely, I guess, depending on the school board and just the school or district itself, I mean, it could probably cause some chaos because based on how you've described your career to me, it doesn't seem like a lot of feedback is given to superiors of teachers.
No, but I definitely agree about that. I mean, yeah.
I'll just say principals because that's really the only superiors I know to a teacher. I don't see principals giving feedback to superintendents or people on the school board about their performance.
No, I think that's a really good one because when you think about supervisors in a school district, it's not just a principal. You got assistant principal, you got principals, you got deans. You do have the superintendent, and I do think that feedback needs to go all the way up to the top. And then us as constituents, like we got people on the school board, we want to make sure they are representing our interests. So yeah, I think there should be some feedback there for them. But I like what you're saying about the whole principal piece because, I mean, let's keep it real. We got some principals terrorizing some teachers around here. And so you have teachers stressed out. They're on edge. They're trying to make sure the kids are learning the standards, to make sure they're meeting what they need to do to hit the mark on the standardized test. You got 50 million initiatives. Actually, today, my husband and I, we went to the school district where we live in. They have a parent council, and this is it's like district wide. And today they were talking about social emotional learning. And so we're at this meeting. And so we're trying to be involved. We're trying to give feedback, but sometimes you just don't know if I say this feedback, is it landing anywhere? Is it making an impact? Is it making a difference? Because at the meeting today, you had a white lady that stood up, and I just was irritated, to be frank. I was just really irritated by her even standing up because she said, I'm just going to ask this question, I've been hearing like out in the community, and, you guys are all white women up there and we're talking about equity. Like, what are we doing? And I was just so irritated by the way she was asking because it was like, I'm not really asking this because I may be necessarily concerned. I'm just kind of hearing things. So I just want to throw it out here just to make sure we kind of check this box. That's kind of how it came off. And so I heard what she had to say, and I'm like, I'm sitting in the room, and my husband and I on the farther side of the room, we could see a couple other black parents. And I said, you know what? I might as well open my mouth and ask something. And I just... It's the truth. And the lady even mentioned it. It's like, when you look around the room, it's nothing but white females here, like mostly. Like, we're struggling. And I countered back because at the beginning of the presentation, they defined equity. And then we're talking about, oh, we're going to diversify. Like, that just really pisses me off when people are using the word, we're going to diversify, and we're focused on kids of color. Like, that's a nice way of saying anything that's not white, but you're not really saying too much of anything. You're not saying to me, I'm going to close the achievement gap for these students. I'm going to address it specifically. So I said, and somebody asked a question like, how are you measuring this? Good question. And I'm like, well, we gave some pre-test data about social emotional learning, gave them pre-test, and they want to do a post-test. Okay, that's great. But if we're implementing social emotional curriculum, it's because we're trying to essentially help kids regulate themselves so they're not getting suspended. And so I just asked specifically, what are you doing for the black kids? The district we live in, there's 11 districts in Indy where we live, and our district has the largest achievement gap between black and white students. And we're talking about social and emotional learning and keeping kids in class. So there has to be some correlation between black kids being out of class and not learning. And so what metrics are you measuring? And so it just really gets irritating. It's like, you're doing the right thing, you're giving the feedback, but is anything sticking, anything happening? And if I'm in a school where it's like my principal is terrorizing me, and then you're saying, do the social emotional learning, do this certain curriculum, go ahead and do a club, go ahead and turn in all this data, and I need a chart for this, and do your lesson plans, and redo this, and stay after for this meeting, and you got to volunteer for X amount of sporting events. Like, you're just done, and you walk away from the profession. And some of these people that are walking away from teaching, they were good teachers. Like, my husband and I are a teacher right now that left our son's school, like, who was teaching 4th grade. And that's the grade our sons are going to next year. And I wish that teacher was still at the school, but the teacher just kind of was like, this isn't working for me. But I think what my husband is saying, if you're giving that feedback to the principal, and overwhelmingly, the whole staff is like, this person is giving initiatives, but they're not showing me how to implement it. This person is giving feedback, but they're not providing the support for me to improve. This person is telling me my classroom management sucks, but they won't give me coaching and training how to make it better. That needs to be known, because then that principal needs some development. That principal needs coaching, because then either A, you're going to find out this person should have never been the principal to begin with. And that's a conversation we're not having in education. We're quick to fire teachers. We're quick to coach teachers out. What about some of these principals we need to coach out? And it's kind of like what my husband was saying, like when they did the state interviews, and then he said it like rattled some cages.
And some managers lost their job.
Yeah.
They got moved around somewhere else, because one big theme in our agency is we need to have the right people in the right seats. That's a big theme that we have there, because you can tell right away some places do not have the right person in the right seat. It's pretty evident.
Yeah. And I think, there's so many issues I talk about in school. If you've been listening to my podcast, reading my blogs or articles, I've talked about the many issues. But I think one of the issues that we don't talk about enough is that we don't have the right people in the right seat. And some of those people are in leadership. And if you have the wrong leader, where's the heck the ship going to go? The school's going to go in the wrong direction because you have the wrong person. You have people that are just writing people up left and right with no just cause, or they are living in their office. I wrote an article that was called The Case of the Missing Principal. And it's about the principal that you don't ever know where this principal is. They're never in your classroom. They're never really in the halls. You go to your office. I guess they're off campus again as some type of training. But this person is supposed to be leading the school, and you don't even know where they are. And I think there's a lot of sectors where people have bosses. And on one hand, you can take it two ways. I worked at a school I actually based this on a school I actually worked in where I literally didn't know where the principal was most of the time. And at the end of the day, I got a good evaluation. Everything was great. My kids were learning. But I'll tell you for a fact that the person I taught next door to, the kids weren't learning. And the principal wasn't around. So you had a person like me that was getting results and I wasn't being checked upon. You had someone next door that wasn't getting results. And then there was other teachers on that floor, because I'm just going to talk about this one floor I was on, that ended up quitting. And they were good teachers. But because, when people quit, they just typically just don't exit. And some people just brawl off and you don't know what the hell happened. But some people, they at least tell somebody what they were disgruntled about. And some of the people mentioned is like, I don't want to be at the school around these low quality educators. What they were saying was, I don't want to be around the school where I'm teaching next door to someone where the kids are just watching movies all day, where the kids are just doing packet and you sitting behind your desk eating food, or you're not even on campus when class starts, you coming back across from wherever you were at. Like, that's a problem. And if you're going to be part of an organization, nobody wants to be part of an organization where they feel like there's no prestige because you can do whatever you want, or you're not getting acknowledged. So it's like, hey, because that's the other piece. Jermaine spoke about acknowledgement. I was doing the right thing. I was moving data. Did anybody say, Shantae, that's great? Shantae, thanks for busting your butt. Thanks for sitting there and recording that audio for that kid who can't read the book so he can at least know what the heck is going on. Because I had to do that off my work time because I tried to record at school, but in other classrooms, people were popping off. And when I listened back to recording, I could hear kids yelling in the background from another class, so I couldn't even record at work. Did I get any acknowledgement? No. I got acknowledged, I'll tell you that, I got acknowledged one time, it was publicly in front of the staff, and that was at the beginning of the year, and that, when the school year starts, you have all these great initiatives. I think that was any organization, whenever that cycle starts, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it with fidelity. And so one of the things was like, we're going to acknowledge people. Well, don't say you're going to acknowledge folks and you do it for August. Okay, you do a few people in September. By the time fall break rolls around, you don't forgot about the whole initiative. Like, that's the type of stuff or the type of reason why people leave. And the intent to return time, when you're saying as a teacher, I intend to return next school year, I'm not sure, or I'm not returning, that's really not the time to have the conversation about what can I do. You either should know what that is before we get to that part in time, or that conversation should have happened before that point in time. Because intent to return should just be, it shouldn't really have to even be a meeting about it. It should just be really black and white, yes or no. The only way I can really see maybe is, like, I know some teachers who didn't know because their spouse may be taking a job outside of the state. So that's a true maybe. But the rest of these folks, and I'm actually going to write about attempt to return. I have a whole article that I'm actually outlining and I'm going to write about. But a lot of people, they're not confused. They just don't want to tell you. So they just say maybe. And I'm going to talk about in my article about why we shouldn't be confused. We should just state what it is, because it really helps all parties involved when we are more honest with ourselves. So we've talked a lot about stay interviews. I think they're super important because some of the little things matter. I know teachers that have left. Some of them just wanted a little leadership. They didn't even want anything big. They didn't want to become an assistant principal. They just wanted, hey, let me be a department chair. Hey, let me do 2 PDs a year. Let me present. Let me be a team leader. And that was a simple fix. I know one school, I had put my name in the hat to do some different opportunities. They did give me one leadership role, but it was unpaid. And that was the other thing. I ended up getting a leadership role that was unpaid. It wasn't no stipend. All the other people got stipends, but I didn't even say anything. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go and do it. And then when I finally actually was going to leave the school, I had turned in my resignation, did all the things. They were like, oh, Shantae, we'll let you do this and we'll make you a team leader. Now, granted, by this point in my career, I had been team leader a few times, so it wasn't like a big whoop to get this now at this particular school. But it's like, I shouldn't be out the door for you to try to dangle a carrot. Because if it's me, and Jermaine will tell you, when I'm about to roll off, I'm about to roll off. There's no, you can have all the conversation you want. And this happened to my husband, and he can speak to this a little bit. don't send a black person to come talk to me to try to get me to stay at the job. And like that, tell a little bit about kind of how that happened. This happened earlier in my husband's career where he got to a point where he's like, you know what? I just need a change. And they go get the other black. And I got to say, go get the other black person because we both, I guess, I don't know if there is I can't really name a field where we could say that minorities are the majority. I don't know. But in both of our fields, like, we're always looking for more people that are black, more people of color. So yes, talk about how you were pretty much out the door and how they try to get you to stay.
Yeah, so this is at a place of employment when I was fresh out of college. Pretty much my first job using my actual degree. This job was pretty stressful. Shantae can attest to that. We had just got married, but I was barely seeing my wife. I mean, I was just working and working. You know, trying to improve my craft, make a name for myself, and you know, it just came to a point where, you know, I'm busting my tail and I don't see any fruits from it. So at that point in time, I just said, you know what, I'm just going to test the waters and see if, you know, if I actually have improved myself enough to work somewhere else, get paid better, and, you know, more or less get a promotion. So that did happen. I did get a job offer, and I accepted it. And I came to my manager's office. I gave him my 2-week notice, and he just looked at me and said, "Oh, well, I'll just be frank. This is adult podcast." He literally said, "Oh shit, we waited too long to promote you and give you a raise." You know, and I'm thinking to myself, you're damn right. This is not the time to be saying that, nor to admit it to me blatantly once you realize it. So after that, you know, he started going through a series of pleas to get me to stay. So he offered me several times, you know, increased pay, promotion, you know, and to be quite honest, the promotion and pay was much more than the new job offer I accepted. But I still said no, because the well was dry. You know, I didn't feel vindicated enough to accept it because I didn't think anything was going to change. Right? I mean, yeah, I get paid more, you know, based on me working hard, but that should have already happened. So, like I said, he offered me one last time a pay increase, and I still said no. So then their last resort was to use a fellow colleague who was African American, was a female, and she just flat out came up to me and says, "Let's go on a little lunch, you know, outing. I just want to talk to you." And during this outing, she said they came up to me and they straight up asked me, is there anything that she could do to get me to stay? Because they were at their wits' end. So they felt if they got this black woman to come and talk to me, who was more senior than I was, and to kind of offer whatever, that I would stay. And the answer was no. And when I told her that, she said, "That's fine. I completely understand where you're coming from because I was in your same situation." You know, she pretty much had I don't want to say the exact same career path, but I mean, it was similar. She was fresh out of school. She got a job at a big company, She worked her tail off, and she didn't get any acknowledgement for it. And when it was time to move, she just moved. And she didn't have any regrets leaving because they just worked her to death. And she was just like, I'm done. And, you know, I respected that out of her. I mean, she did what she was asked to do. I do feel that she felt sad that I was leaving because she thought I was talented as well. But she understood my response. And she says, you know, you have to do what you have to do. And I completely understand. And yeah, they were way too late offering that to you. So.
Well, yeah, and that's what annoys me the most. Don't wait till I get out the door to be. And I think the thing that really made me upset, because like he was saying, we were newly married, and and on my end, I wasn't innocent. I was working at a charter school at the time that just got founded. So I'm at school some days from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., but he wasn't home either. So this wasn't going to work for our relationship, with him being at work, working like a dog, me being at my school, working like a dog. That wasn't going to work. But the thing that irritated me the most is because we talked about, okay, maybe you should ask, because what was happening, he had a junior title, but he was doing senior level work. But they said they couldn't give him a pay raise until they changed his title. But they said they couldn't change his title because they wasn't ready to give him a pay raise. So it was like this whole catch-22 he was caught in. And so he kept asking about it. And then at the point, he was just like, I'm not going to keep asking them about it. If I'm a junior level person and I'm doing senior level work, I should go out here and try to put myself out here to see if somebody else will hire me. And they did. And that's the other thing. Everything isn't always about money. Sometimes you just want peace of mind, and you want, like for me, and he'll tell you, this job also was like a good 45 minutes from our house, which I did not like, because the nature of his job, sometimes if something happened with that database, he had to be working there and trying to fix it. And so now I'm like, when are you coming home? But the last, cause he's only had 3 jobs in his career. That the first job we're talking about right now, and then his current job is the one that has to stay interview, and there was a job in between there. But the last 2 jobs have been closer to the house. So when he said, oh, I'm about to come home, I'm like, I know he's going to be here pretty soon. That other job, especially because he was literally coming across Indianapolis, it's like if it's an accident on the interstate, something happened, 45 minutes could turn into an hour and 15 minutes. It was, and then, you know, with us having kids, like, it's hard when there's 2 working adults because everybody wants to take a break. So I'm just like, when is this man going to get home? Because I want a break. So it's kind of like some of those things you think about. But I mean, I've been in the same situation. I remember when I had said I got this other job, I'm not going to leave. They had somebody text me to ask what could they do. But what I found, and it was so interesting. First of all, this person didn't even have my cell phone number, so they had to go get it from someone else. I had never even talked to this person on my cell phone, ever texted this person on my cell phone. And I'm like, and my knee-jerk response, I'm much better in communicating with colleagues now. I was like, why are you even texting me? That was my text back to this person. And they said, well, you know, it got out that you were leaving. And side note, when I went to go finally interview and accept this job, the only body I told I had interviewed and accepted this job was my principal. But it got out across the whole entire building. And I actually confronted my principal about this because I said, don't say anything. And she goes, well, you know, things get out. And I got real quiet because I'm like, this is my superior. For the most part, I hadn't had any issues with her. And I'm like, I just need to say this without popping off. And I looked her in her face and I said, the only person I told in this building was you. No one else knew I interviewed. No one else knew I accepted this job. So if anybody knows about it, it's because you said something and I asked you not to say anything. And her face starts to flush. And she did apologize. She actually apologized to me, which I appreciated her copping up, because I knew I didn't tell. Like, it's easy to know where a rumor starts when you only tell one person. The only body that knew I accepted that job was her, my husband, and my parents. And my parents and my husband don't got no association with anybody in my job. So this gets out. And so now this person's like, yeah, I heard. Well, what I found out, this person was actually, when they were texting me, they were actually at school with administration, and they asked this person to text me. I'm just like, this is like so impersonal at this point. I already accepted the job. I don't care what y'all trying to offer, because they were trying to offer me more roles, because these roles would come with a stipend. I'm like, no, Barnes is out. Like, it's too little, too late. And just to kind of wrap this up, this is why we're saying state interviews are important. My husband and I both explained how we both have been in situations where we left. And it could have been something you could have done. If they would have allowed Jermaine to have more work-life balance and gave him the title and the pay he deserved, maybe he would have still been at that first job. If I was giving some of the things I was that I wanted to do, I would have stayed at that job. But I mean, this is not to brag on ourselves, but I feel like we're talented individuals. This is black excellence right here. Like, you should be sad if one of us leaves. It's the truth. That's how I feel. And I know I'm super biased, but that's just not me saying it. I've talked to some of my husband's bosses, and they've all have given him, there's not a boss of his I've talked to that hasn't said anything that hasn't been, it's all been good. It's been really glowing reviews. Like, I want him to stay. He's good. And there's a lot of people that speak on me. It's just some of the awards I even been nominated for, or awards I received. I'm always genuinely surprised, because yes, I feel like I'm doing what I'm doing, but I don't expect to get acknowledged. And for me, this is a work of heart. Like, I'm in this for the kids. Because I really want, especially black kids, I want them to have a better outcome. But these black kids, or any kids, can't have a better outcome if the teachers are just, it's a revolving door, or if your job is a revolving door. So if you take anything out of this, maybe kind of broach this conversation at your job, saying, hey, maybe this is a good idea. Maybe we should have a state interview. Maybe this will improve our employee morale. Maybe it'll improve our turnover, because I think the most important thing is the conversation of, like, you may not even know something's an issue at your job if you don't even ask the employee. It may be something so simple, like, cause we do quite a few surveys in my current school, and some of it's just like, I want more camaraderie. So like, one week we did a whole potato bar. I personally could care less about those things, but some people that made them feel really good and felt really invested in the organization. You did this for me. We have a lot of people at my school who have a lot of different dietary needs. So we made sure we had gluten-free stuff. We made sure we had vegan stuff. Just knowing that, hey, my employer made sure there was stuff that I could eat, and it wasn't just a banana. Like, they made sure they went and got a vegan cupcake. They went and got some gluten-free rolls or whatever, what I can't remember, we bought. We were intentional. We know stuff about you. We're trying to make you feel, because there's nothing worse than having someone not know something about you that's like that type of importance. And then you show up to an event that's to celebrate everybody, and it's like, oh, and I can't even eat. It's those little things that matter. And I think stay interviews are a perfect opportunity to learn more about your employees, learn more about what you can do better. And it's also a time for the employee to articulate things that maybe they've been harvesting inside. Because maybe, let's say they can't fix it. Maybe just putting it out there will let them think about, okay, I can't fix it next year. What can I do over the next few years? If you just stay with us this next year, let's see if we can figure it out. And since you brought this idea up, let me have you, because like my husband said, like, having a voice matters. And a lot of times, the further you go up the organization, the more removed you are from the work. And you need those people that's down here, for lack of a better word, doing the grunt work, that's in the day-to-day, to say, hey, this initiative that you shoving down, it's not working down here. Like, we don't have the resources. We don't have the time. Nobody even understands what we're actually be doing with this initiative. That's the type of feedback you'll get for a stay interview. So hopefully you enjoyed my very first guest. I think he provided some great information, but clearly, you probably say I'm a little biased. But thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next episode.